Today's conversation is about something that we call the coffee break, which is the mechanism that we put in place in our personal lives that we learned from our professional lives, right? So we learned that one of the things that we do really well in our practices, in our businesses, is that we protect these really important communities.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Hey, Remarkables. Welcome back to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And we're psyched to be with you today. So much great feedback coming from our last episode as we were talking about this incredibly important meeting rhythm and dynamic of a relationship between the CEO and the COO. We talked about the same page meeting. And in the throes of that conversation, we made mention to the meeting that we have every week with our spouse, as the nickname for the COO. CEO, COO is like the work marriage, right? So in our world, in our house, coined by my COO, she's like my work wife, right? So this is somebody who's like, I have this incredible relationship with. Truth be told, we're like siblings. We love each other like siblings, which means that we support each other like siblings. We work hard together like siblings, and we drive each other crazy like siblings. But at the end of the day, we both know we got each other's back, right? So it's just a relationship that's built on trust. And trust that drives great communication between us. So, that was the last episode. If you missed that, go back and check it out. The reference point was the actual marriage, so you and I both as married men were married to these fantastic women, as my friend Pat Tembo likes to say, we're over-chicked, so I think he's right on that. So Camilla and I, met in 30 years ago at Lyman University. We've been together ever since. We've built this awesome family. Pete, you and Mary, you guys seem like high school sweethearts to me every time I'm around you. It's just awesome. And you guys have built this unbelievable family, 5 kids. And we've been there, done that with each other, multiple businesses, right? So all of the trials and tribulations of being entrepreneurs. And we've had this extraordinary journey, and we've had the journey together, right? And such an important part of that journey has been the trust in each other that comes from really great communication, right? So, that's the foundation of our relationships. And I think we both arrived at the same conclusion that as we got busier and busier and busier in our businesses, it became harder and harder and harder to keep those communication channels open, only because we just, there was these small windows of time that got smaller and smaller as our businesses grew and our families grew. Next thing you know, we could be ships passing in the night, and we were losing that close connection that comes with really intentional communication, right? So today's, conversation is about something that we call the coffee break, which is the mechanism that we put in place in our personal lives that we learned from our professional lives, right? So we learned that one of the things that we do really well in our practices, in our businesses, is that we protect these really important communications called meetings, right? By establishing a meeting rhythm that goes on the calendar that happens no matter what. It never changes. There's never a question, because we recognize the sanctity of that meeting and those communications to make sure that, we have a healthy business, a healthy practice, and our business would grow and we could manifest our vision, right? So that being said, we said, you know what? That seems to work well in our business. Why don't we pull that into our personal lives? And that was the birth, the inception of the coffee break.
One of the things that Dr. Stephen, I love about this is, how synergistic it is in the relationship, between the CEO and COO. And I'll be honest, there was a season in my life when I would talk to my wife, Mary, and I would tell her that, I run, like, the business is like a family, like raising a family. Like, there's just all these relationships, and it's just like, you're constantly thinking about it. Like, even if you go to bed at night, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're thinking about it, and you wake up in the morning, first thing you're thinking about your business, you're thinking about it. It's like a family. It's like a child. You're raising this child. And, and then, I said, and that was not always completely understood, but it is now. And then I looked at the family. I said, I have to run the family like I'm running a business. So this is actually not that the family is a business, but you run it like it's a business. In other words, as if it was that significant, that important to do it a certain way and structured and organized. So really, it's because it's that important. The mission of the family, the mission of the business, the vision of the family, the vision of the business, the purpose of the family, the purpose of the business, the premise of the family, the premise of the business. That's how important it is. That's why we want to position our families as if we were running it like a remarkable business. And so that's one thing that I think that for my family, for my relationship with Mary, going to that wasn't necessarily fully understood in the beginning, but now, she has really embraced the fact that that's actually, if we look at it this way, it's actually easier when you start to get it organized and you run it as if you're running a business. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to differentiate, Dr. Stephen, between a coffee break and a date. So a coffee break is not your date. So I don't know about you, but sometimes it's hard to get date night, right? It's hard to get a date in a week. And so this question is do we do a date or a coffee break, right? So they're two separate things. A date, and I think at least I can speak for myself, I could do better at these, right? And making them special and making them awesome. You talked about being a high school sweetheart. Well, sometimes I'm not, So we could do a better job of like really dating our spouse, right? I know I could do a better job of that. Even after this podcast, I already know I'm going to be like taking my game up into another level because I'm now accountable. So, really dating your spouse. And that's time to go out, have fun, love on each other, dance, have fun, like just enjoy. The same page meeting, it's a business meeting. It's a business meeting, or excuse me, the coffee break. It's a business meeting. It's not a date. And so it can feel a little bit like a date, which is cool because you get that private time, you get that time alone. But it's designed specifically to talk about the household, to talk about, the family needs, the budget, the schedule, the kids, any other issues going on around the household, yourselves, each one of you. So we have an agenda that we follow, but like that to me is just got to be differentiated, Dr. Stephen, is that a date is a date and a same page meeting or a coffee break is a coffee break, and they're not the same. And it's equally as important to make sure that one doesn't become one. And typically what for me, the issue is the date becomes a coffee break, and that
the date degenerates into
and
right, into
that's a quick way to ruin your date.
Yeah. So in keeping with the practice analogies, there's meetings and there's trainings, right? So, and if, the difference between meetings and trainings is role playing, right? And if you don't role play, you didn't train, you just had another meeting, right? So, there is a big difference between date night and coffee break, right? So, I love to say, man, I want to get lucky on date night, right? And for me, if that date night degenerates into a meeting, no one's getting lucky, Pete. Come on, let's face it, that's just not the environment, right? So, there's a difference between meetings and trainings. There's a difference between date night and coffee breaks. Which one's important? No, they're both important, and they serve very different purposes, right? So, the experience for us was, it came to the point where as Camilla and I started our practice together. She's a chiropractor as well. We've never known anything but together, right? So we met at the first quarter party in school. We were together through 4 years of school. We did an internship together in Arkansas, an associateship in Virginia, started our practice together in Boston. So, when you talk about together, we've been together, right? So, and then 8 years into practice, as we're just running this booming, awesome practice together, all of a sudden, we have a first kid, then a second kid. Next thing you know, she's at home, and, her calling was to be that world-class mom and had to pull out of the practice. And I'm like, honey, I got this, right? So I had already had built this awesome associate doctor program. So we had plenty of hearts, heads, hands, and feet to run around. We were just like ready to rock and roll. And I'm like, honey, let's divide and conquer. I've got the business. You've got the home. At least for this season, let's agree that's what we're going to do. And that, we got away with that a little bit, Dr. Pete. But the truth is that things started to break down, right? As things got busier and busier and busier on both sides, on both fronts, we were ships passing, right? So I would, our practice was in a different state, right? So I drove an hour to the practice and an hour home, right? So we would adjust starting at 6:45 in the morning, which means huddle was at 6:15 in the morning, which means I left the house at 5:15, long before anybody was up. And then I'd get home. We'd see patients till 6:45 at night. I'd be getting home, let's call it 8 o'clock, right? And I had just seen 300 people, which means last thing I wanted to do was share. The last thing I wanted to do was talk, chat, right? But Camilla, to her defense, she had been home with kids. She's excited that she wants to hear things. I don't want to be. I don't want to talk about anything. I definitely don't want to talk about the house, the bills, the budget, issues, kids' problems, travel, plane tickets, like the sink's broken, we need a new refrigerator, like all of those things called life, right? There was just no room for us to actually discuss those things. So instead of having those just cherished moments where we could just connect and share a moment of silence together, right? Share a comfortable silence and just relax and enjoy each other, it would turn everything degenerated into a meeting all the way to pillow talk, right? So, of course, when we'd finally get a babysitter to go on a date night, what happened, man. She had me and it was boom. It was the only time, right? So next thing you know, every date turned into a meeting, which, again, to our objective on date night, all of that just started going sideways. So really it was the pain of just not having the space and time for us to connect and to really have our same page meeting as a couple, right? And run the, France and Enterprises, run our life in a way that was organized and relaxed and calm and intentional. And next thing you know, we found ourselves saying, you know what, we need a meeting. We need to have a weekly meeting, just like we have a team meeting. So we did it right. We set up a babysitter. That was my job. We'd break 2.5 hours. We'd go to Starbucks. She'd get her latte. I'd get my large black. And we'd sit in the corner and I knew my job. We'd get out our checklist. She'd have her calendar and her, her notebook and her list. And my job there was very clear. My job was to be present and to listen, right? And just let that thing run so that she knew that she had my undivided attention. And it was extraordinary, man. We went from dividing and conquering to uniting and conquering in those meetings. And we've been doing that ever since, right? So we are now a decade or more into doing these, and it's been an inflection point in our marriage, in our family life, in our businesses, frankly, just a trajectory in our life.
So powerful, man. I love listening to your story and just the evolution of that. One of the things that comes to my mind is consistency. We talk about consistency as a new intensity. One of the areas that Mary and I really struggled is consistency with this meeting rhythm. And I could make all the excuses in the world, right? Every 2 years, another kid is born and your world gets flipped upside down. For 6 months of the pregnancy, Mary was, in the bed, and so it's like, what do you do? Living away from, closest family member, 1,000 miles away, stuff like that. It's like, how do you navigate that? So I think a lot of us, you walk through the different seasons, so I look at everything as seasons. That's how I always look at everything. I look at everything in terms of time as a season. And, for different seasons of your life, some of you may be listening to this, podcast, and you're in a season maybe like I was, and some ways still am, with a lot of really young people around the house, like full on, like if you don't watch them, they could die, or something like that in your house because they're going to do something really bad, or something along those lines. So it's like you have like that, maybe that stage, or maybe the baby is actually dependent upon mom, constantly because it's still a baby stage. So there's all different stages and seasons, but regardless of that, I just want to speak to the heart of this is that there is consistency, because regardless of the season you're in, regardless of how busy that things can get, again, it might not be Starbucks for some of us. Maybe it's just going to be your bedroom with the door closed and putting on a movie for the kids because that's all you could do. But whatever that thing is, to know that, for my wife to know that I've got her back, that we're on the same team. I want to be on the same. I want you to feel like we're on the same team. I want to be able to hear you. I want you to know that I am listening, and no, I'm not just going to sit here and solve problems real fast. Like I want to be able to listen and take it in and hear the whole thing out. Which sometimes I have impatience about that stuff. So, for us, it's been consistency. And when we talked about this, we've talked about this a lot. Consistency is a new intensity. It's amazing when you can be consistent, how it creates a new dynamic in the household. And so my challenge to myself and encouragement to us is that we would, number one, set a dedicated time. So for example, we're in the summertime when this podcast is going on. My world just got flipped upside down. I went from a schedule where, the kids are out of the house for X number of hours a day, and they have this school, and then they have extracurriculars, and that to summer schedule, which kids are in the house. We've got camps. So we've literally flipped our schedule. Our schedule is completely flipped right now into a different schedule. So our same page meeting for my wife and I, our coffee break, historically during the school year, is on Fridays at midday. That's when I block it. It's a blocked time for me to do, because I know it's before all the kids get home. I do my best work during the daylight. So I like doing meetings during the daytime. And that's, I'm at my highest energy. And that has been historically what we do. Well, that time will change now in the summer, and it's probably going to go to a Sunday rhythm. And that's because in the summer, that's what we have found works best during the summertime. So I just want you guys to know, like, listen, it's dynamic. This meeting rhythm, the location, the timing, it's dynamic. But one of the things that we don't want to sacrifice is consistency, meaning that there is a time that's blocked each and every week to discuss our life. And mainly, if anything, just to connect and to listen and hear, hey, how are you doing? How is it going? You might only get a check-in one of the meetings, and you might not get to anything on your quote unquote agenda. But guess what? Maybe that's the most important thing. And that was all that needed to be accomplished that day. And as an achiever myself, I like to tick boxes off. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and you got to be okay with that. So again, I just want to speak to in this moment, just the reality of it. That sometimes it's going to be that way, that it's okay. But the encouragement is to put it in the schedule and just be consistent about that. Because if you could do that, I just see it's going to create so much more peace, so much more order in the home. And again, that alignment and being on the same page and being united is just so important.
Yeah, Dr. Pete, I'm going to tell you the directive is to do that. The encouragement is hearing you just describing what everyone experiences and feels, right? So I call this the needlepoint dynamic, right? So when you look at a needlepoint, it's like, look on one side of the needlepoint and there's this beautiful image that it's like, oh my gosh, look at the colors, and it's amazing they did that with yarn or thread or whatever they use, whatever. And then you flip it over and it's a complete rat's nest on the other side of it, right? This is life, my friends. Like, we have to just recognize, like, everybody's like that. So I hope you heard from me that it was a rat's nest of management going on at the house. It was wonderful, and it was our rat's nest, right? But at the end of the day, just like, don't look at the outward facing, like the facade, right? So when you hear us say it's about creating a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one, remember, remarkable does not imply perfect, right? So it has nothing to do with perfection, right? So this is part of a remarkable life, right? Is making sure that you create the space and time to connect with your spouse, right? And that is 90% of it, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that you cared enough to show somebody, you are a priority, right? So how we choose to spend our limited resources of time, energy, focus, and money is the best way to communicate to somebody that they matter, that they are a priority. So just carving out that time, putting it on the calendar, it's just such an expression of love and respect, right? So for your relationship and for that person. So that's 90% of it, half the battle. I should say showing up for that is like, now you're at 90%, right? You actually did it and followed through with it. And then the other 10% is how you execute that, that coffee break itself. So, walking through that whole thing is probably outside of the scope of this conversation, but, I'll share this coffee break manual that I created only because we've got hundreds and hundreds of docs who are actually doing this now. And we had a framework that we followed, and everybody's like, what do you do during it? And I would like make these copies, and I would like take pictures of what I do, whatever. Finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put together a PDF. So I'll give you a link to the PDF. Dr. Pete, let's just drop that in the show notes down below if they want to get a copy of our coffee break PDF. So it's a journal that you can download. I don't know how many pages this is, but this is pretty bitchin'. It's a tool that you can use. Don't let it feel overwhelming. You can just start by actually scheduling a coffee break and having one, and just talking it out over a cup of coffee and work your way into this manual. Or just say, you know what, I love that. I need a system to follow. I need a framework. I need guiding questions, right? So I don't get myself in trouble, or it doesn't totally get derailed, right? So that's how I built this thing, was to help you have more productive and more successful coffee breaks where you come together, right? And ultimately you both are clear on what is the objective of the coffee break, right? And just like we said in the same page meeting, it's not about being attached to being right. It's about being attached to doing the right thing. And instead of for a business, it's for your marriage, for your relationship, for your family, for your life. You come together, you get on the same page, as a couple, as a family, and just creating these collisions to keep us in dialogue, right? So we have open streams of communication, that touch point, which is just so incredibly enriching to a marriage, to any relationship, and really one of the key cornerstones of a remarkable life.
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our remarkable success partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy.
All right, Remarkable CEO podcast. We are here in the studio, myself with Dr. Richard, coming all the way from Australia, joining me today in the studio for this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast, where I'm featuring one of our remarkable success partners who's helping you. Yes, that's right. You CEOs be more successful in your business. And guess what? In your life. Remember, it's about having a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life and not instead of one. So our success partners that we select help you achieve that goal, which is our goal, working with you. So again, help me welcome to this podcast, in this episode, Dr. Richard from Spinalogic. Doc, so good to have you, and looking forward to our interview here today.
Hey, Dr. Pete, lovely to meet you. I'm really looking forward to this interview. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, we have heard some just great feedback from the docs that we know who are working with you and your organization. So we felt like it would be really wise for us to have you on our show for a few reasons, Doc. So one is you're a chiropractor. Number two, you're a chiropractic business owner. Number three, you're actually a founder of another business in the chiropractic space, serving chiropractors. So you're like a mega CEO. So it's going to be awesome just to have a few minutes with you today talking about. Yeah, I mean, we're talking shop here today. I mean, we're entrepreneurs. This is a CEO podcast, and I kind of want to take a peek behind the curtain, a look under the hood, and let's talk about. So tell us a little about your story. Becoming a chiropractor, now starting another business that serves chiropractic. Just give us. I'd love for the listeners to have an insight who you are before I start asking you some questions.
Yeah, sure. Well, when you do ask questions, ask anything you want. I'm happy to share anything. I'm always a big fan of sharing. What my experience in business is like, you can know all the things, but it's until you actually execute on them, it doesn't really make any difference. So I never have a problem with sharing stuff, because if the more people implement the things that you share, then the better the world becomes.
Totally agree.
I started off as a physicist. I graduated physics from university over here in Australia, and I was working with a peak research body over here, the CSIRO, working on the Australia telescope, a big radio telescope project. But I didn't find it was fulfilling for. I was more interested. I found that it was really socially really limiting. I just couldn't. It was such an extraordinary, it was like working with a whole bunch of Sheldons. We would go out into the lunch break, and we'd sit around in a big circle, and everyone would just be sitting there eating their lunch with nothing to say to each other. And be like, oh, so has that liquid helium arrived? Oh yeah, it has, right? Yeah, okay, cool. And I was like, man, I don't think this is going to work out for me. And so I went traveling around the world, and through a series of circumstances, sort of discovered chiropractic. And once I started practicing, of course, I had a strong background in physics and computer software. I've been programming them since I was a kid. And so I saw the enormous mismatch between the technology that was available for us chiropractors in the office compared to what was actually possible. And I was like, I can't be that hard. Maybe I should just, write my own. Of course, writing the software is only one part of it, and then running the business and the marketing and the support and all of that is a completely different level of the game. And I had no idea what I was getting myself in for at the beginning.
So Spinalogic birthed
because there was clearly a need, but it also birthed out of passion, which I always love businesses that start from, we say like, the purpose of a business is to solve a problem for someone else, right? That's the objective, the purpose of a business. And then we always add on for a profit, right? So it's got to be making money. So we're going to do a lot of good. We're going to help a lot of people, and we're going to do it it's going to be a profitable venture. So basically I'm hearing the genesis story, which is you already had a background as a physicist. You're already a computer programmer since you were a kid. This is just your wheelhouse. You have passion, but it wasn't meeting the need that you had as a person to say, hey, this is what I'm gonna do for my life. So you go through a series of circumstances, become a chiropractor, you get into our space in our industry, and you're like, this is a blind spot. Like we're way behind the times here. So you're in practice a couple of years, and then you're seeing this. So this is what you said back in the early 2000s, like 2002, 2003, somewhere in there, you really start working on this project. When do you go to market?
2000, actually. Would have been around 2000 at that point, because at first I wasn't really looking to solve other people's problems. I wasn't looking to start another business. I was just thinking, man, this software is lame. There's got to be better software around. And so I just started writing my own, and we used software that I'd sort of put together for our own purposes. And so it only ran in our office for a couple of years. And then I'd have people coming and visiting, going, oh man, this is awesome. How could I get this in my office? And I was like, well, you sort of can't. And after that happening, I was like, see, no, I really should do something about that. And then took the steps. So that was in 2003 when we did our first install outside of our own office. But we'd been using our office for about 3 years at that time.
Okay, so here we are. So it's 2003. You launch. You get your first your alpha test or beta test, since you were the alpha. And you start rolling it out. So here we are, almost 20 years later. So here we're having this call. You're a success partner. You're working with lots of chiropractors. So tell us a little bit about, so when I come to you as a prospect, so I'm a chiropractor, I'm a business owner, I've got a practice. I come to you basically saying, hey, doc, what you can help me solve my problems. What are we solving right now? What are some of the main problems you're seeing these docs today are facing that you immediately say, yep, we can help with this, we can help with that. What are some of the big kind of the highlights that we're solving right now?
I reckon one of the biggest one, and it's probably the one that the least common people will least commonly come to us realizing that that's what their problem is. They don't realize that this is their issue, but it's the number one, and that is the inability to be able to be consistent in their processes. So when they got their systems that they got running in their practice, and they want them to be the same from one visit to the next, from one day to the next, from 1 week and 1 month to the next, they want them to be consistent. Most practices have a lot of trouble doing that. And the way they do that is by having lots and lots of training. If they're going to do it well, they have to do lots of training and retraining on the same processes. And that was one of the things that I really want to address, was how can we systematize, how we can take everything that's in our training manual and take it from being in the manual to making it like a living process that we use every day. And that was the biggest one. So automations. My philosophy is, if there's some way that a computer can do something, it can do it better than a human can, then we should get the computer to do that. And then that leaves us humans available to do the things that we humans can only do and computers can't touch. So things like automating appointments, automating payments, automating patient flow onto the tables, just seem to me like things that obviously we should take care of. And then we can spend our time on the high touch, high emotional sort of fields, like actually adjusting or talking to the patients about their family, or talking about getting their children under care, those kinds of things. So as much as possible, my philosophy is, if we can automate it, let's automate it.
I loved your line. I don't know if this is a quote, but you said, if a computer can do it, it should do it. And I love that. Like, and then the things that the computer can't do that the human can do, then that's what they should be doing. So I love your approach to this. Just like anything in the office that like a computer could do that, then we should get a computer to do that. Right. I love that.
Exactly. And one of the big spin-off benefits that comes from that is that it makes it allows the amount of automation you can have in your office. You can still have staff in your office. A lot of practices reduce their staff. So we've had practices that have gone from having 7 staff running to 1 staff. One staff member, like serious reductions in the amount of staff members that they use in their practice. Some practices can operate with no CA, and some of them can do no CA sometimes, but other times they'll have a CA. And so that works out really well if you have someone that's unable to be able to make it, if they're sick or they got something on that makes them unable to attend, they got a sick someone in their family they need to care for. To not have that dependence is actually turns out to be a really big benefit. Because otherwise, in a chiropractic office, you've always got to make sure that there's some kind of a way that you've got to back up with your CA. It's not really possible, for example, for a practice to have just one CA. They have to have at least 2 CAs, so that if one of them is sick, then they can call on the other one. Whereas once we got things automated, it gets to the point where, okay, if we don't have a CA, we can still do our basics. We can still see all our patients. We can still adjust everybody. Maybe we just can't do newies. And so we get a minor degradation of what we can do instead of like a complete loss of ability to be able to see patients altogether. And that's enormously powerful for a practice to reduce that kind of dependency.
Yeah, I mean, we teach in our CEO program the concepts of scalability and durability. So basically what you're saying is, hey, a point of exposure is if one of your team members goes down, another one slides in. Well, what if you don't have another one? You're saying the computer never gets sick. They never need a sick day or a vacation day. They don't take holidays. They're always on. So you've got a reliable team member. I love that. That's a powerful way to think about creating durability and scalability. And we do talk about using technology as being one of the 3 ways that we teach in our CEO program to do that. So on that same vein of thought and thinking, talk about impact. So if I said to you specifically, because I know you're a chiropractor practicing and you're doing this, we think a lot about impact. Like, how do I make a bigger impact? We talk about making a bigger income, but not all at my own expense. So talk about impact. How are we helping more people through Spinalogic?
Well, one of the things you have to do when you manage the business is you have to care for your employees. And the more employees you have to care for, then that's like there's an emotional responsibility. There's an actual responsibility that comes with that. And the less of that you need to have, then obviously the better. And if you can have if you have one person working full-time versus 2 people working part-time, then you're definitely better off to have that one person working full-time, because you only have one other person you need to worry about. It reduces the amount of payroll considerations that you have and complexity that you have associated with that. But if you've got that durability from the fact that you've got the computers can fill in where the gaps are, then you don't have to worry about having that extra staff. It also means that the staff are spending less time on those sorts of technical processes. So they're not spending so much time on booking appointments. They're not spending so much time on taking money. In fact, they spend pretty much no time on that at all. It allows you to have like instead of having your CA sort of trapped behind the desk and dealing with things at the computer for the patient, they can actually come out from behind the desk and they can be out amongst the patients. And so they can help people at the door, and if someone has any trouble, they can help them out with it. If they can talk to people, they can play with the children, and they can spend that time interacting with your patients and building the practice, so they can become much more promotion focused in your office, building relationships.
Love it. So good. This is exactly what we're talking about. I love it. So if you're just kind of catching up, this is Dr. Richard from Spinalogic, and we're having an awesome conversation about creating durability and scalability in your practice through leveraging technology. Okay, third, another question I have for you. So we talk about, as CEOs, we want to use leverage to buy back. So we use our money, to buy our time, energy, and focus. So if I want to get more time, energy, focus for me, whether I want to spend it on my family or myself or growing my business or expanding, I'm going to use my money. I'm going to buy other people's time, energy, and focus to do that. You could also buy technology to enable you to buy that back. So we always think in terms of there's an exchange of dollar for value. And so talk about that. I love this conversation when we think about ROI. So we've been teaching, Doc, this concept of ROE, which is the return of your energy, return of your focus, and ROT, return of your time. Not just return of money. So all 4 of those are limited resources. So we all have to navigate that, like realistically every day, and we're all managing those things. So talk about that in terms of how you're seeing doctors are getting time back. They're increasing their energy, their focus, their time, because they're investing this kind of money, and also they're generating more revenue. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. One of the things, the place where I first realized that software can be an extremely powerful educational tool is when I first started practicing, and I knew nothing about bookkeeping or accounting. And obviously, when you have your own practice, you're thrown in the deep end and you have to learn about that. And so I just bought some good software, and then I just followed the guidelines that software gave me. That's basically all I did. And then it was like, oh, okay, I just followed those processes. Oh, that all makes sense. And it all came together in my head. And so that's when I realized that if we have software that takes takes like the concept of best practices in chiropractic, for example, and provides guidelines and makes it simple for you to be able to implement those processes, then you can just sort of use that as a template on how to get things up and started. Ultimately, though, you want to use as much of those automations as possible so that you can really leverage your time. And the automations is huge, because once you've got the automations fully documented in your practice, and by automations I mean every single process in your practice, you can document and you can make it easy so that your staff follow those steps, sort of like a supercharged checklist. But ones that your team actually want to use, not ones that are on a piece of paper that they fight you about and don't want to use. It actually makes their life easier. But once you've got that fully documented, your entire practice process is documented in that specification. You can copy it and you can take it to a new location and you can reproduce it. We've got some practice sites that are like opening up practice every month at the moment, where they can just like completely take everything they've got in one practice and reproduce it in a new location, and everything's all up to speed in a month, and then able to move on to the next site. I just can't believe the speed at which they're able to reproduce and leverage their resources.
It's incredible. So we're talking about leverage. We're talking about growing our business and making a bigger impact, making a bigger income. And we're doing that through technology and using automation. And we're speaking with Dr. Richard from Spinalogic. So Doc, last question I have for you here is, how do the docs get in contact with you? What's the next step if they want to do a demo and they want to talk to someone, they want to see what you guys are doing? What's the next step?
Sure. I suppose the best way is just go to our website, spinalogic.org, spinalogic.org. And you can place a query on there. We've got our sales team who are happy to look after you. Jared is our main man there, and he's awesome. Knows the product very well. He's very excited, very passionate about chiropractic. He's been a mate of mine for like 20 years, and as recent and sort of brought himself into the business because he was really excited for the direction it was going in. We got a great support team. It makes it really easy to transition over, because that's always one of the big obstacles with going to new software is you're sort of used to all the systems that you're using with the old one, and how do you bring it across? And so we're really good on making sure that we transition that over. We got a great team for onboarding new practices. I'd say go there and if you have a little look. A lot of things are covered on that. If you got any queries, just register through that website.
Awesome. So you heard how to do it. It's spinalogic.org, and you can reach them that way. Dr. Richard, again, thank you for taking the time to join me on the Remarkable CEO podcast today. Greatly appreciate your conversation. Love your energy. Love your insights and all that you're doing to support this profession and use your passion and your talents to help doctors help more people and create more remarkable practices as part of a remarkable life and not instead of one. Thank you again so much. And to all of you who are our amazing listeners.
Lovely to meet you. Lovely to talk to you. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And look forward to meeting you hopefully in person one time here in the near future as we're opening the world back up. And then for all of you amazing listeners, thank you for being a part of this Remarkable CEO podcast. And we'll see you next week on our next episode. Until then, take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic. And what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.